went with Srila Prabhupada. It was Gursinder and myself and Govindadasi and Mahapurush. We drove Srila Prabhupada into town. We borrowed Vamanadeva's old station wagon and drove Srila Prabhupada into town. And we got to the radio station. It was supposed to be a 1-hour interview on the biggest station in Honolulu at the time. And we got there, and Gursinder said, all right, you go with Srila Prabhupada and Govindadasi into the radio, do the program with Srila Prabhupada. Mahapurush and I, we have to go and get some boga and different things. So there I was with Srila Prabhupada and Govindadasi. We went into the radio station, and went in, Srila Prabhupada was being interviewed, and Govindadasi and I were sitting. Srila Prabhupada would be sitting in the chair, and we were sitting at his lotus feet. And about 3/4 of the way through, the radio personality asked Srila Prabhupada, could you please chant so our listeners could hear this Hare Krishna mantra? So we thought that Srila Prabhupada was going to chant, and we were going to listen. And he starts chanting, and we didn't respond. And he looks down at us and he says, chant? So it was, once again, it was so intimate. Srila Prabhupada is chanting, Govindadasi and I are responding. The whole intimacy of every day's activities, who would want to leave? You know, he had that special quality, that loving, he was giving that love that we had never found anywhere else, and which, you know, keeps us going to this very day. When I first met Srila Prabhupada, I had met Govindadasi in the morning, and the previous night I was living at my parents' house, and I had a horrendous fight with my mother. I wasn't happy working as a carpenter's apprentice for the state apprenticeship program in Hawaii. We were making forms and pouring cement and making hotels, and we had a big fight, and I told her I was going to quit my job if they didn't put me on a housing project. So she said, if you quit your job, don't come home. So the next morning I went down to the union hall, and they said, no, you need 2,000 hours of form work. And I said, well, I'm out of here. It was only about 7 in the morning, so I went downtown in Honolulu. I was waiting for the library to open. I was going to get some books on how to propagate avocados. And I was sitting on the front steps of the library, waiting for it to open, and this young lady walks past, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and a couple minutes later she came back, and she said, I just had to come and talk to you. You look so miserable. And it was Govindadasi. And I was already a vegetarian. I was already trying to read different copies of the Bhagavad-gita, and we were reading Paramahansa Yogananda and all these different types of things. And she kept saying, we talked for several hours, and she was in town. She was doing some propaganda work for Srila Prabhupada at the newspapers and the radio stations. And she kept saying, you have to come home and meet my spiritual master. So we made arrangements to meet that afternoon after she had done her work for Srila Prabhupada. And I was going to go home and meet her spiritual master. And we met that afternoon about 4:30. And I just had a bicycle. Krishna had taken everything away from me. I didn't have a car. I was living with my parents. I just quit my job, had no money. All my friends had completely deserted me because I wasn't taking drugs or going out and partying, and I wasn't interested in the things that they were interested in anymore. So Krishna had taken everything away from me. So we met that afternoon, and I left my bike at a friend's house, and we hitchhiked from downtown Honolulu out to the North Shore, which was about 45 miles. And we get there and walk up into this old house where the area is called Ka'ava, and it was just an old 3-bedroom house, and they had 5 acres of land. And we get there, and she says, all right, I'm going to go see my spiritual master. I'll be right back. So about 5 minutes later, she comes back and says, all right, you can meet my spiritual master now. And she walks me right into Srila Prabhupada's room. And he's sitting there. He didn't have a shirt on. His body was very golden in color. He had a trunk, that was his desk. And practically speaking, I was just straight off the beach. I wasn't wearing a shirt either. I was wearing a crucifix. And the first thing he said to me, he said, so, what is your philosophy of life? And I started telling him all this impersonal stuff, and he listened for a few minutes, and then he started preaching Bhagavad-gita. And he had the purple Macmillan Bhagavad-gitas. And without me ever asking him a question, he was giving me all of the answers that I was trying to find that were completely puzzling my life. And it was like I felt at peace. There was just something special about all the things that he was saying that just put me completely at ease. So I stayed for 3 days. I didn't call my mother. She didn't know where I was. Stayed for 3 days, and then we went, picked up all my stuff and moved into the temple. And we lived there. That was Prabhupada's first visit in Hawaii. He was already there for 2 weeks at the time, and he had another 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks. But we lived in the same house with Srila Prabhupada. Govinda was there, Gorsinder was there, devotee named Mahapurush. Sudama was a brahmachari. At that time, he was the one who first shaved me up. But it was such a special situation. My first service was, I washed Srila Prabhupada's clothes every morning in the bathtub. But it was just, it was a very casual atmosphere, but at the same time, Srila Prabhupada, he was like the father directing all of the children how to be human beings. He said, your name is Balabhadra Das. Balabhadra is another name for Lord Balaram. So I guess Srila Prabhupada knew the future, because I've always been trying to be involved in agriculture and working with the plow, and so Prabhupada was foreseeing the future by giving that name. This is in 1975, because Krishna is, you know, I guess according to my desires, but Krishna has given me somewhat of a strong physique. And in 1975, when Srila Prabhupada came to Hawaii once again, we went to the airport to greet him, went back to the temple, had darshan, he spoke to all the devotees, and then it was time for him to get his massage. So all the devotees were leaving. Sudama grabs me and he says, massage Prabhupada. And my heart skipped a few beats. And I said, massage Prabhupada? I thought he was kidding. And he says, Prabhupada is ready for his massage and he needs somebody to massage him. I would like for you to please give Prabhupada a massage. You have strong hands. So I was petrified. And I got a gumption. I went in, and Srila Prabhupada indicated to me how he wanted his massage. The head was very vigorous and took quite a long time. And then the chest and the back, you would kneel. If you're massaging Prabhupada's chest, you would kneel in front of him and go up and down on his chest. Now, when you push on somebody, you can feel them resisting you. This was not the case with Srila Prabhupada. I was kneeling in front of him, and I was going up and down on his chest. I couldn't budge him, and there was no resistance whatsoever. And for about 15 minutes, I'm massaging his chest, And he would keep saying, harder. And I'm just giving everything I have. His eyes are closed. And he kept saying, harder. And there's no resistance coming from him at all. And I was completely devastated because I'm thinking I'm so strong, but he was teaching me a lesson. Here's this old man, but he was like a rock, a boulder, which I couldn't budge. And the same thing happened when I did his back. He kept saying, harder. And I was just completely devastated. And his skin was like velvet. It was so soft. But yet he was so solid. He was just sitting there with his eyes closed. You know, there was no big deal. And I was just, couldn't budge him. And that, at the end of the massage, he stood up and he went on his leg with his finger. Too much oil. And that was that. But it was such a lesson to not think that I'm strong, that the spiritual master is the strongest, and that I should follow humbly in his footsteps.
That's a good story.
We went into town one way, and then we came back another way through the sugarcane fields. And Srila Prabhupada said, pull over here. And he said, those big, tall sugar canes, you go and pick them. So we went, they were about 10 feet tall. And we went and picked these sugar canes. And when we got back to the temple, Srila Prabhupada changed from his dhoti into a Gumption. And in one of the vast puja books, on one page, there's 4 small pictures of Srila Prabhupada. It's like a big plantation chair. And Srila Prabhupada is there eating sugar cane. But what you can't see in the picture is that we're all sitting at his lotus feet, and he would speak about chewing the chewed of the material world. If you're trying to enjoy the material world, it's like chewing the chewed. After the juice has been sucked out of the sugar cane, there's nothing left. There's no sweetness. But what was happening after Srila Prabhupada had finished chewing the sugar cane, he was discarding it, and we would all scramble for it, and it was so sweet. And we wondered about this analogy, but we concluded that because it was coming from Srila Prabhupada's lotus lips, that the sweetness had become magnified. So we were all getting this very special mercy. And he was sitting there in this big plantation chair, just like a little boy, chewing on the sugar cane. He was quite happy eating the sugar cane. One of the ladies that lived on the edge of the beach park, she had a big German Shepherd dog. And this German Shepherd dog, every day when Srila Prabhupada would come for his walk, this German Shepherd dog would come out and run around Srila Prabhupada. And usually with dogs, Srila Prabhupada, he would, keep them at a distance and like that. But this dog, he didn't take any offense. And the dog would run around and around and around and come up and graze Srila Prabhupada's leg, and Srila Prabhupada would just keep walking. There was something special about this living entity in this dog's body. And one day, the dog ran right between Srila Prabhupada's leg. And we were all petrified. We, should we chase this dog? And Srila Prabhupada just chuckled. There was some special ras that they had. The day after Srila Prabhupada left, the dog disappeared, just vanished. And the lady called us up and she said, I know the dog came and walked with you and played, with you every day, and now he's disappeared. Have you seen him? I said, no, we haven't seen him. He never showed up again. There's just that special ras. And there was another animal. Just before Srila Prabhupada came, Govinda had found these little kittens on the side of the road when she was going to the store. And she brought them back, and she would give them milk on the back porch. And there was one that she had named Nimbarka Das Brahmachari. Now one day Srila Prabhupada walked out through the kitchen, out the back door, to go out to the yard and have a little walk. And he didn't know the kitten was there. And he just touched it with his foot and went on his way. The day after Srila Prabhupada left, we gave the kitten away to a neighbor. The kitten died the next day. So once again, a special encounter with Lord Krishna's pure devotee. There's another, this was in San Francisco, I guess about 71, 72. There was, in the this was when the temple was on Valencia Street, and there wasn't really nice accommodations for Srila Prabhupada. So one of the friends of the temple, he had a nice house over in Berkeley. Srila Prabhupada would stay over there. And in the evening, all the devotees would go over to the house and take Prabhupada's darshan. And one night, I was sitting right up by Srila Prabhupada's desk, and he was sipping milk. He had a nice goblet and spoon, and he was just sipping the milk. And he was explaining that milk should be taken sipping hot. That if it's cooler than that, it simply goes to urine. But you should take it sipping hot. And then it goes to the brain to nourish the brain, the finer brain tissues. And a few minutes later, he puts his spoon down. And I looked in the goblet, and it was still half full. So the temperature had cooled down, and he just stopped drinking it. And he didn't say anything for a minute, and he was gazing in the back of the room. And I followed his gaze, and there was Jayananda. He was sitting in the back of the room, completely sound asleep. But Srila Prabhupada just looked at him like, you know, they had such a special relationship. There was so much love between the two of them. He knew Jayananda worked so hard, and he didn't say anything. In 1975, I started a business in Hawaii. I had access to about 500,000 pounds of raw honey, and because Lord Balaram likes honey, it was a business that we could do, and also it was prasadam distribution. In Hawaii, there's 9 main islands, hence the name New Navadweep. So I lived on the big island of Hawaii at that time, and we were getting this, we were packing and marketing raw Hawaiian honey. And I wrote to Srila Prabhupada about, you know, what are the, you know, should we, you know, tithe a certain percentage, you know, to the temple or to specific projects. And he said, the formula that we're following, the example that we're following is to give 50%. Then your business will be successful. If you do not give 50%, then it will not be successful. So I've always tried to do like that. And I actually met with Srila Prabhupada. I sent him this letter explaining about the honey business and how the first year we had distributed 100,000 pounds of honey, and we're going into our second year, and that I was getting distributors on the different islands, and I was trying to get devotees to do the business. So when he came to visit, the letter got to him, and that afternoon I went up and visited with Srila Prabhupada. I got to see him that afternoon. We talked a little bit about it and like that. And I had already sent him some honey, and he was very much liking it. So I asked him, you know, about that, and he said yes. The formula is to give 50%. Je anilo
truth.